You know what pisses me off most about fiction? The gods. The god of thunder, Super Saiyan god, the god of war. It's like every time a character hits a new power level, suddenly they're a god. And sure, it sounds cool. It's a convenient way to say this guy now is way above everyone else. But then 5 episodes later, they get slapped by someone even stronger. And then he becomes super god. Come on. At some point, you gotta ask, what even is a god? Because the way fiction uses the word, it basically just means stronger than usual. It's lost all of its weight. People hear God and they don't even know what that means anymore. It begs the question, what even is a god? Where did this idea come from? What did the ancient people mean when they said God? And how did we get from that to Thor getting folded by Grimace McDonald's? Let me tell you what the word really means and why almost no fictional character even comes close. First, we'll start with the lowercase g gods, the ones who really inspired fiction. The Norse had Odin, god of wisdom and war. The Yorubbans had Shango, god of thunder and justice. The Aztecs worshipped Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of wind and learning. Each culture's god reflected their understanding of nature, power, life, and death. These gods were powerful, but the powers were specific. They ruled over war, weather, fertility, sea, death, love. They were cosmic forces given personality and story. And perhaps it was because of this personality, coupled with power, that Western media took over the gods as their own. Now fast forward to the 20th century, these gods don't disappear, they evolve. As Western art and media develops, especially in the United States, the idea of superhuman powers begins to take a new form. Enter superheroes. Superman, created in 1938 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, is widely considered to be the first superhero. But look closer, and you'll see he's modeled on the gods. Stronger than any man, flying through the sky like Hermes and vulnerable like Achilles. He's not just a man, he's a modern myth. Jump to 1981's Clash of the Titans, a film that reimagined the Greek myth of Perseus, with stop-motion monsters and lightning-hurling gods sitting in a boardroom atop Mount Olympus. It's mythology made melodrama, made popcorn entertainment. In animation, we see a similar pattern. In the 1980s He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the main character literally declares, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power, as lightning strikes and he's transformed into a godlike warrior. The idea isn't that he becomes a god of anything specific like war or the sun or time, just that he becomes more, bigger, stronger, a divine glow up. By the time you get to the 1990s and early 2000s, anime brings its own spin. Series like Record of Lotus War and Yu Yu Hakusho start to play with gods as final enemies or ultimate forms of evolution. Not divine figures, but boss levels. A god becomes the ceiling you break through. Which brings us to today, where Goku ascends to Super Saiyan God, then Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, and the planet god Ego appears in the MCU, and then gets blown up. But ultimately, these are moments of theatrical symbolism, not mythic reverence. We've gone from gods who were the wind and the harvest to gods who look cool while charging up. And the limitations? Often arbitrary. A god can destroy the universe but lose in a sword fight because the hero believes in himself. The rules shift to serve the drama. So here's the thing. In ancient pagan traditions, gods symbolized the forces that shape the world: storm, death, rebirth, fate. In modern fiction, God is just a word for stronger than the last guy. But the truth is that even from the start, we were working with something pretty shallow. Because there's a deeper, older, and far more serious meaning to the word God. Not a god, not a powerful deity, not a boss battle, but God. Capital G. The one, the only, the source of everything, the real God. The real and full meaning of the word, that which defies comprehension when you come to its metaphysical depth. This idea didn't come from pop culture, or even from myth in the traditional sense. It came from philosophy. Way before monotheism became a major world force, ancient Greek philosophers were already trying to reason their way towards something beyond the chaos of Olympus. They looked at the world and saw order, design, and purpose, and asked, what's behind this? Take Xenophanes of Colophon. He was one of the first to openly criticize the anthropomorphic gods of Homer and Hesiod. In surviving fragments, he writes, Homer and Hesiod have attributed to the gods everything that is shameful and disgraceful among men: theft, adultery, and mutual deception. And then he goes even further. But if cattle and horses or lions had hands, horses would draw the forms of gods like horses, and cattle like cattle. What he's saying is radical for the time. Our gods are projections of ourselves. They're not divine, they're idealized reflections of human nature. And that makes them unreliable as explanations for the world. Xenophanes pushed towards a radically different conception of divinity, one God, greatest among gods and men, not at all like mortals in body or in mind. Plato takes this line of thought and makes it even more systematic. If divinity is real, Plato argues it must be the source of goodness and order, not chaos and conflict, the very things which are the source of drama within modern fiction. That leads him to the form of the good, his idea of the ultimate reality. But it's Aristotle, Plato's disciple, who really pushes the idea forward. In Metaphysics, he writes about the unmoved mover, a being that causes motion in everything else but itself, unchanging and eternal. He writes, there must be a principle which is not moved by anything else, and this is the source of all motion. This being isn't just powerful, it's necessary. It must exist. It doesn't act out of emotion or force, it exists as pure actuality, the final cause, the ends towards which all things move. It is, in a way, the philosophical prototype of what would later become God in monotheistic religion. Now shift to the ancient Hebrews, who, while surrounded by polytheistic cultures, held to a radical idea that there is only one God. Not just a bigger or better God than the others, but the only one. In Exodus 3:14, when Moses asked God for his name, the reply is mysterious and profound. I am who I am. This isn't a God of thunder or love or war. This is being itself. A God who isn't just in the world. He is the source of it. The Jewish God is not a part of nature. He created nature. He doesn't need temples or food or sacrifices to survive. He just is. And when Christianity emerged from Judaism, this concept deepened and spread. The Christian God is not a cosmic super being among others. He's the one infinite grounds of all existence. And understanding that requires a whole new level of thought. And so, in the Middle Ages, thinkers like Anselm, and especially Thomas Aquinas, begin to systematically describe the nature of God using philosophy and theology together. In his magnum opus, Summa Theologiae, Aquinas lays out the 5 arguments for God's existence, what we now call the 5 ways. They're not about feelings or blind faith. The rational arguments based on motion, causality, contingency, degrees of perfection, and finality. His definition of God is not a being with the most powerful who can be surpassed. It's being itself. He writes, God is ipsum esse subsistens, the act of being itself, subsisting. But what does that mean? It means God isn't just a really powerful thing that exists. God is the reason why anything exists. God's essence is existence. He is pure actuality with no potentiality, no change, no limits. Let that sink in. Not a guy with a beard, not someone stronger than Superman. God is existence itself, eternal, infinite, necessary, and unchanging, outside time and space, and yet sustaining all of it. Aquinas also explains the attributes of this God, omnipotent, not because he can do anything, but because he is the source of all power. Omniscient, because he's the cause of all knowledge and truth. Omnipresent, not by spatial extension. That is to say that it's not because he exists everywhere, but because his power sustains all being, everything at all times. And immutable, unchanging, because change implies imperfection or lack. And simple, not made of parts, not composed, but utterly unified. And most critically, God is not a part of the world. He's not a character in the story. He's the author of the story and the paper it's printed on. And God is not a character that can be defeated, that can be surpassed. God is not something that you can even comprehend. God is existence itself, the most fundamental being, that which sustains everything. You cannot surpass God because God is being itself. God, properly understood, is the reason there is a story at all. Now, to be fair, there are a few characters in fiction that actually brush up against the deeper Aquinas level concept of God. Not just raw strength, but total metaphysical necessity, timeless, changeless, eternal, and the cause of all things. Think about Eru Luvutar from the Silmarillion by Tolkien. He isn't just another being in the world. He creates the world, the laws of it, the music that holds it together. He exists outside of time, and nothing in the story can surpass him because he's not even in the story in the same way that everything else is. He's the source, or the presence in DC Comics, or the one above all. Rarely depicted, but when he shows up, he's not fighting. He's being. Everything else, angels, devils, multiversal chaos, is downstream from him. That's closer. Even the architect in The Matrix Reloaded tries to touch this space, a being of pure logic who creates reality through code. Still flawed, still limited, but in an attempt to depict a mind that orders being itself. These characters don't just act powerful. They embody some aspect of the fundamental structure of reality, which is what God is. He is that which is fundamental. But these characters are rare. And they're not the loudest or most marketable. Because let's face it, the existentially necessary, ontologically simple, metaphysical foundation of all being doesn't sell action figures. What even is that? So shallow characters that are pretty strong end up being what people talk about when they say God. And this is the real tragedy of fiction, because it takes away from thousands of years of the pursuit of knowledge and truth. The word God once pointed to the highest pursuit of human thought. It wasn't just a title you slapped onto the strongest guy in the room. It was the end of a thousands-year-long journey, a journey through myth, through reason, through revelation, through philosophy. From ancient sages watching the stars, to prophets wrestling with meaning, to philosophers questioning the very nature of existence itself, all the way from the ancient Greeks to Descartes, to Spinoza, to Locke, to the modern age. All of it pointed towards something bigger than us. Not just powerful, but necessary. Not just above all creation, but the reason there is creation at all. The concept of God, the real God, has shaped the very foundations of philosophy, law, morality, art, and the human longing for meaning. This idea has pushed our species to think beyond the immediate, the material, the obvious, all the way to the infinite, the eternal, and the necessary. But today, we've reduced this sacred, staggering idea to a synonym for final boss. We've taken the most serious, most intellectually rich concept humanity has ever tried to define and flattened it into a costume change. And we don't even notice. That's the real loss. Not that fiction is having fun with gods, but that we've forgotten what the word was ever supposed to mean. We've buried thousands of years of insight, struggle, and revelation under a pile of glowing hair, floating islands, and dramatic music. It's not just bad theology, it's bad memory. It's the amnesia of a culture that traded the infinite for the flashy, and didn't even know what it gave up.